who do go ahead and watch afterwards. You know, we're all living very busy lives. A lot of students have class at night. And for us, it's really important just to have the conversations and then get the information out and share it in whatever format works best for everyone who comes along. Just so you know a little bit about how this webinar is going to work. Right now, the chat is muted. You can, however, use the Q&A. And if you go into the Q&A, you can submit a question either with your name or anonymously. And I will say that we have made this webinar actually confidential. So the only people who can see who is on our webinar are myself, and I think Becca might be able to see as well. But you know, we are very conscious of privacy and confidentiality issues, and we want everyone to feel confident that they can ask questions and get their questions answered here. I will also say that it is really important to us that we follow sort of civil guidelines. We are here to learn. We are here to have discussions. I will kick you out if you are being extremely obnoxious because life is short and we are here trying to learn some things. So that's, you know, please come with good faith. I am really looking forward to this conversation, and I think it's going to be super exciting. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And you can do that just by raising your hand, and then I can see that, and then I can unmute you so you can ask the question and all that. But let's get started, and I know that people will be coming in. Becca, are you ready?
Totally. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
I'm super excited, and I'm actually hoping that I'll be able to show the screen of your website. I was actually playing around with it a little bit earlier today, and I put in both my current location and in a location I used to live in South Carolina, and I was fascinated by the difference. So I'm super stoked to have this conversation. So, you know, keeping in mind sort of your own safety and your own comfort level, can you tell us a little bit more about you and sort of, you know, how did you get started with this?
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for having me. And I would be so excited to see your user experience on ineedana.com. Hi, everybody. My name is Rebecca Nall. My pronouns are she, her. And yeah, a little bit about me. I am originally from Texas, a small town about an hour north of Austin. Growing up, it was around 70,000 people, I think. Deep Bible Belt. There were Bible study groups happening during lunch in our public schools, right? So super conservative place. But I was really fortunate to really be surrounded by feminists, by people who were really well educated, and really open with having those kind of conversations. So I knew that reproductive justice, though it wasn't exactly named that at the time, was something that I cared deeply about from a really, really young age. Um, Cut to a few weeks before my 25th birthday, I met this really awesome guy at a trivia night in Austin. And a few weeks after that birthday, I realized that I was pregnant and I didn't want to be. I called my regular doctor and they said they couldn't help me even, which was shocking. And they kind of told me to Google it. So I did and really quickly learned that those Google results were filled with a lot of outdated and incomplete and often purposely inaccurate information. I was really lucky. There were a couple of independent clinics for me to choose from in Austin, Texas at the time. And I picked the one that had a price list posted publicly. I got my abortion. It was great. It was actually like one of the most empowering medical experiences I've ever had, but I couldn't understand why figuring out how to get there was so hard and so stigmatizing. At that time, I was a couple years into my career as a designer and engineer, and I was just like, this could be so much better. Uh, so a few years later, I started building the thing that I wished I'd had at ineedana.com. We launched the first proof of concept in 2016. and have been iterating it and iterating on it and building it ever since. And now we're about to hit 1.3 million unique users to the website, I think this month.
Wow. That's really so. Can you tell us a little bit more about like, okay, so you're an engineer. You studied computer science? Is
I
that
actually
or
I actually studied advertising. The University of Texas at Austin, Hook'em Horns, had a really great advertising program. And growing up in that small town, I was really into theater, which I think is really like a little bit of comms and branding. And so the advertising school was this place where like it felt like businessy enough for my dad to be okay with paying for me to do it, and like creative and artsy in the way that theater kind of was. So it was this happy medium. And yeah, I got a great education there. I graduated at the height of the recession. And I kind of like lucked into this random internship at a really small design firm that was focused on branding, focused on creative strategy. And like most folks at that time, was starting to do more web work. And as the youngest person on the team, a lot of the like traditionally MFA trained designers didn't want to touch like UX UI. And I was like, I can do that. I'll figure it out. And so that's how it all started. I think one of the themes of my life and my career is like following the things that really intrigue and excite me, and going, I don't know how to do that yet, but I'm sure I can figure it out. Let's try it. And that's really the throughput of my journey, is that
excellent?
growth mindset.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, UX is sort of user experience and sort of understanding how someone who's using an online website experiences that, moves through documents, moves through page clicks, and it can make or break whether or not people interact with your product, your website. And as someone who started out in the humanities, I actually studied women's studies and religion, and then moved into the social sciences. We think a lot about like how do individuals interact with information.
Hmm.
So that's great. But so how did you like some of the nuts and bolts of getting this started? Because obviously you're not doing this by yourself. You're part of a team. Can you tell me a little bit more about sort of like how do you do something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's journey can be different. Ours was very much so, um, it did start out as me kind of uh tinkering on this idea, and going, what's the like easiest way that we could do this? And that same guy from trivia and I are now married. We now have a daughter together, and he's also an engineer. And so he was able to really step in and help where I had gaps. And we did that, with a small, just the two of us and a couple of other folks outside of the tech space, on the side after our day jobs for years, and just kept tinkering away on it. I don't know if that's something that I would like always recommend as the path, but I think there is something really powerful to uh this bootstrapping concept, right? Like just doing something and keeping the day job going. It's something that you don't hear a lot about in the nonprofit space,
Mm.
but you hear a lot about in the more startup capitalistic, like LLC Twitter kind of world. We kind of did that in the nonprofit world. Now we've been really fortunate that in the face of crisis, more support comes out. So post SB8, which went into effect in Texas and was the first really restrictive 6-week ban that remained in effect. And after the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe, we've had more financial support come in. And so we've been able to hire that team. We're now a team of 6, like uh it's our primary role and focused on it, 3 to 4 kind of part-time contractors. And we also have an incredible network of, I think we're more than 3,000 volunteers that we work with. They help us review data. They help us push out the website onto their social medias. I think one of the things with being bootstrapped and not really having a budget is like we couldn't buy ads for a really long time. And even now our ad budget is very small in comparison to most. And so we've really relied on that grassroots word of mouth, word of social media. I don't know what the
Hmm.
quite right. We've relied on that community viral kind of posting. And so our volunteers help us with that too. So yeah, it started as this like, what do I wish I had? How do I bring about the people to like help me do that? And then it really slowly ballooned.
Yeah, it sounds like a really major undertaking. As you think about like, I mean, I've dealt with managing, you know, databases and email lists and just how tremendously overwhelming that can be. And your volunteers just managing them sounds like a tremendous enterprise. So, how do
I
you
mean,
manage that?
it's all about what's the phrase? I'm not gonna come up with a good idiom right now, but I think it really for me is about this product development ethos and mindset of what is the minimum viable thing here? What is the minimum thing I can do to have the highest level of impact, right? And I'm going to keep that scope. I'm going to identify what the hypothesis is. I'm going to decide what my metrics for success are. And if we don't see success, then we stop. And we really focus and try to prioritize, right? Um, you can have I guess the idiom I was going for is like you can have fast, good, or cheap, right? Pick two. And
Mm.
so we really try to like be strategic about that. And so our volunteers that we manage, it's really a matter of we have one volunteer day a month and we have a set thing that we do every time. There's a way for people to get involved in their own time and do things in their own regard. And they're like free to do that on their own, right? So we think about how might someone help us asynchronously? What's the value of us coming together? And then we try to not let the scope creep on that because it's something that building community and sharing the website is like really important to what we're doing. And it's actually not our mission. Our mission is to build the best tools for someone who needs an abortion today in the United States. And making sure that we reach them is obviously like core, and our volunteers can help us do that. But it's not the thing that if we
Hmm.
can only do one thing at the end of the day. And so, yeah, we really have hyper focus on that mission, a lot of clarity, a lot of like, do we do this or that? And we say no to a lot of things. And then when it comes to looking at the data itself in these systems, we really try to work smarter, not harder. And I think that's one of the beauties of of bootstrapping is like you can't do it all. And so like from the very beginning, we knew we couldn't call every abortion clinic in the United States every week to see if they're updated, right? But we could have web scrapers that check their websites every hour to see if anything's changed. And we can have when something changes go into a feed so that we could review it after our day jobs and say
Hmm.
like, yes, that's accurate or no, it's not. And so we try to automate ourselves out of tasks as much as possible. And I think that that's something that, in the last year with AI becoming not just not just advancing technologically, but becoming like a brand in and of itself, right? And something on everyone's lips. I think that's a mindset that's getting more common of like, how do I automate this? How do I hand
Mm.
this off in a way that's more efficient? That's something that's really been part of our DNA from the beginning, and I think, differentiator of our team and what makes us like a tech forward nonprofit in particular.
That's so interesting to hear about sort of how AI can be helpful in things like this because I will say I'm not fully a Luddite, but I'm a little hesitant about some of the AI tools and but trying to automate large scale data collection where you then just need the human to sort of check and make sure that it's correct and do some of that due diligence. That's a really interesting process. It's very interesting to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, and that's like to be clear, I'm not a Luddite either, but I am very skeptical about the like hottest thing that everyone's talking about, right? And so there are pieces in AI that I think are total BS. There are pieces that I think are really interesting and really cool. I just put my baby in a Waymo, and we rode home in it last night, right? Like I might be a little too trusting in some areas. But yeah, I think there's an interesting mindset shift around automation that gets really exciting. And we're not using AI in our data management yet. It's
Hmm.
something that we're um, looking at. But yeah, I think there's with tech in particular, not just AI, right? It can help us be more efficient. It can help us work smarter. It can enable us to do the things better that tech will never help us do, right? Like
Mm.
the emotional support. And so yeah, we get excited about new emerging stuff and experimenting with it in safe kind of containers.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, we had the privilege here at the Women's Center of hosting a screening of a documentary called Preconceived. And it looks at the practices of what are called crisis pregnancy centers. And one of the things that our students were really sort of both fascinated and appalled at was uh, sort of anti-privacy practices that happen at crisis pregnancy centers because they are not medical facilities, so they're not bound by HIPAA regulations. And they're quite a huge network with some overarching umbrella organizations that then do pull all that data. And so we were all like, we know that many people in Gen Z are very trusting of sort of online. They aren't as concerned about online privacy issues, but that touched a nerve. That really touched
Mm,
a nerve that someone could go to a CPC with the most innocent of intentions, because of course, when you Google, I'm pregnant, I need help, you may get information brought up about one of these, and then provide all of their information, decide that this isn't the place they want to be, but then all of their information is still there. And considering sort of national changes coming down the pike with probably coming down the pike with abortion restrictions. We already see, like in places like Texas, where the AG is trying to get people's medical information. You went to a place, now you're not pregnant anymore. How does that play out? Can you talk a little bit more about, how does your organization really protect people who might want to use the site to find out information that can help their lives?
yeah, I mean, I have not seen Preconceived yet, and I'm glad to be reminded of it because I need to go watch it. But yeah, I think that's when it comes to INA, since day one, we've prioritized privacy. And I think that a lot of that comes from when I was building the first version of INA, I was working at Khan Academy actually, and I was working
Mm.
for on tools for under 14-year-olds. So we were working bound by laws that meant that we could not collect personally identifiable information. And so that was just kind of like my default mindset at the time was like, if you don't have to have it information wise, like why would you collect it? So the three pieces of data that we ask our users for are high level location, if they're under 18, how old are they, and about how long have they been pregnant, when was their last period. Those pieces of information put together can really like never identify one person, right? Like if you're talking about zip code and date of last period, like it's very difficult to triangulate who that person may be if you just have that raw data. So that's the like high level. We don't collect personally identifiable information. We don't ask for it and we don't store it. There is no real back end of that data. It all stays on your client side, on your browser. Um, so we don't collect anything. And we've also really designed the website to be as small of a footprint on someone's browser history as possible. So if you go to ineedme.com/search, you can find literally everything you need to know. Every single provider that you could have access to, every single support organization, all the laws that are pertinent to you, stories, right? All of it. And you can find all of it on that one URL. You don't have to bounce around to 100 different places on
Mm.
ineedme.com and like queue up like a receipt of you searched this and then you searched that and then you clicked this. And I think that that's something that it's not great for our search engine optimization. Google wants to see people going to other pages, right? So there's definitely a push and a pull there, but it's been something that, you know, I think when we talk about privacy, it's typically coming from a place of fear of legal risk in particular, right? There are reasons to be concerned about privacy that have nothing to do with the law,
Hmm.
like parents, like a partner you don't want to know, all of that kind of stuff. But a lot of times I find that that question comes really asking about legal risk. And we know that browser history, like I think we might talk about period trackers in a little bit. All these pieces of data are circumstantial at best, and they are not the like cause of an investigation. And we still want to reduce the footprint as much as possible. We want to reduce the data that's there as much as possible. And so we've really prioritized that in our design of the
Yeah.
website.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to actually share the website because
Yeah.
it's really fascinating. So this is a really good time, I think, for us to take a look at it. You should be able to see this is sort of like when you type in ineedanabortion.com or ineedana.com. This is what comes up. And one of the things that I really liked is that there is so much information on this website. Lots of news, like how everything got started. But what I found was fascinating, and I was talking with Becca about this a little bit earlier, is I did some searching because I was curious, like, how does this work? And I'm going to use, so I used to live in South Carolina in a city called Irmo, South Carolina, which is just outside of, no, not Austin, Texas. And let me just close this out. We don't need to see that. I'm gonna pick not sure. I'm not gonna. I'm over 18, obviously. So here we can just take a look, and it truly has all the information. I mean, it's really really amazing. You've got this is what the current law is. But there are still options. And as I started looking through, I was like, oh, wow, this is really very visual. It's very quick to see information. You can filter all sorts of information. And okay, so here's the thing. We know in the United States that a vast majority of abortion procedures are done very early on. They're medication abortions, so abortion pills, and this is you can click and then you can see. And I thought this was really, really interesting and helpful. You see here, this service is verified and medically very safe, but it can come with legal risks in your state. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And you can click, and then it actually goes through and explains all the information. So this is a particular provider in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I actually am familiar with them from when I used to live in that area. And it talks about these are what the Massachusetts laws are. Your provider is protected, but there could be some risks to you. So it really helps people get information so that they can make the right decision for themselves and their families. And some people are going to be more risk averse than others. And so this gives them the information that they need to make a good choice. I love there's a way you can report if something is wrong. Sometimes things change, you need to update it. The last day it was verified. And then you can also go to the website of the place that you're looking at. So, wow. Like, how do you make this happen? It's just really amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always so delightful to watch someone go through it, and not something that I always have the opportunity to do. So thank you for doing that. Yeah, I think, you've hit so many points on the head. We aim to really empower abortion seekers and trust abortion seekers with all of the information. And we try to present it in a way that is what we call progressively disclosed. So we don't want to just have a laundry list of every provider that's out there. We don't want to inundate people with that it's banned in your state, it's banned in your state, right? Like we want to have people say to us, like, tell me more about the legal risk, or I'm worried that I can't afford this. Who can I
Mm,
connect with? And then connect people with that information because different people will have different needs. And so we really we talk a lot about what's the hierarchy of abortion seeker needs, right? And finding what type of abortion is right for you, where are you going to get it, are the things that we all have to do, no matter our abortion experience, and then getting help paying for it, understanding legal risk, all of these things can vary based on your context. So we try to guide people through those questions.
yeah. And just sort of a follow-up with our preconceived, I think one of the things that was also surprising to many of the people who came was that even though, and I just did search here for St. Cloud, Minnesota, abortion is legal and protected in Minnesota, but we also talk about sort of access. And
Hmm.
just because something is legal doesn't mean that it's going to be accessible for people. And so there's lots of different options, like in St. Cloud, where you can get, abortion pills. But when we think about if you need to go in for an actual in-clinic procedure, there's nothing. There's
Hmm.
absolutely nothing in St. Cloud. And you can go to Minneapolis, you can go to St. Paul, but it is a hike. And, people then can start to think about like, how does this affect me? Can I actually access this? Um, and so it's just, I think, such a really interesting way to sort of share this information. And I love the online stuff. We are an online world now. We live in an online universe. And so being able to sort of understand how things work and what are both, the benefits and the drawbacks of the resource, um, it's just very, very helpful. And there, you have what are your biggest questions and what are the things that you might want to understand. And also, I just need to talk to someone. Where can I go? So you don't feel so alone when you're going through these things. Um, but speaking of like, being an online community, being an online world, we did want to talk about the period tracking apps because this is certainly a question that's come up quite a lot. We see people arguing for advocacy efforts around downloading Flow, the period tracker, and using it chaotically. And I'm like, well, data does throw out outliers, so you can't be too chaotic with, messing around with the app. But, do you have any thoughts about period trackers? Are there some that are better than others, or are people just going to have to go back to pen and paper or even marks on a stick?
Great question. I have many thoughts on period trackers. The first is that it's totally more critical than ever to track periods consistently, whether or not you're regular. If you get a period, track it. Because especially, in places like Georgia, Florida, where we have 6-week bans, like it's critical to know information as quickly as possible. And um so yeah, tracking is really, really important. I think that the best way to track it, like you have to be consistent in your tracking in order for it to be helpful. And so for a lot of us, that means that tech is going to be the easiest way to do it. And so I don't think we can throw the baby out with the bathwater on that. When it comes to are there apps that are better than others? Yes, for sure. And one of the best is really Yuki, spelled Euki. They were developed out of uh, was it IBIS or Answer? Developed by academics who've been in this world for a very, very long time. It was co-developed working with both young people and people in accompaniment networks in other countries that have been doing this work for a long time. All the data stays on your phone. They also have no backend, just like I need an A. And so anything that you input there only lives on your phone. It literally cannot be handed over by them with the subpoena. Um, so I think that that's a really great option. And they do have a lot of really great education. They're now connecting I Need an A's abortion provider data directly in the app. So if you did find out that you were pregnant and didn't want to be, you could get that information securely right then and there. So they're great. I also think that, and this is something that my friends at Digital Defense Fund and I talk a lot about, our period tracker data is not the cause of investigations, and it's not being used as evidence yet. And that's not to say there's not a world where that won't happen, but really where we see our digital data incriminate people and be strong evidence is in our unencrypted conversations with loved ones. So
Mm.
we see, there was a teenager who talked to a friend via Facebook Messenger. Those messages were able to be, I don't even know if they were fully subpoenaed, but Facebook gave them to those investigators, and those were used to criminalize her and her mother. Um, and that's really when we look at it from a security perspective, it's really conversations with friends, people that we trust on unencrypted, unsecure platforms that are happy to hand it over to law enforcement. It's also, unfortunately, healthcare providers are often a source of where investigations start. And so we try to really focus on having people think about what are they writing down, be empowered to know that if you did self-manage an abortion with pills, there's no a medical provider cannot tell the difference between that and a miscarriage period. You don't have to tell a medical provider anything you don't want to. The care is still the same. It will not make anything less safe. So those are the things that, when those conversations start taking off online, we really try to focus on what are the things, the pieces of data that do keep us up at night. And frankly, whatever period tracker you're using, it's not keeping me up at night. It's the conversations on these random platforms and writing down incriminating evidence that is.
Right, like don't send a text to your ex, you know.
Yeah.
So and we see that in like sexual assault cases too. It's like, do not send a text to someone that you are about to report has sexually assaulted you,
Yeah.
So,
Think about your synced devices, for
mhm.
example. You might have an iPad in the living room that is logged into all of your stuff and it dings a conversation, right? Like I think there's so much overlap with uh yeah, SA kind of cases and thinking about how do we protect our privacy. That's the
Mhm.
stuff that matters. It's less of um yeah, less about period trackers, less about location tracking, and that kind of stuff. Though we do
Yeah.
know location tracking can be used to send highly targeted, um, and stigmatizing advertising to people, right? That's the stuff that's more of a concern there.
Yeah, I will say my Facebook algorithm is pretty sure that I'm very pregnant because I do regular searches for the cheapest pregnancy tests available.
Yeah.
So and
Well,
it's,
so are you getting ads for like adoption agencies at all?
I haven't gotten any of those yet, but
Okay.
I definitely get some things that are a little suspect.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, the anti crisis pregnancy centers and other organizations are usually good enough to look like a real service on Facebook. And then, yeah,
yeah,
then you get to the website and it's like, oh, this is not real.
yeah, no, exactly. So thinking about things that aren't real or that we wish weren't real. People are very in a state of confusion, and there's a lot of mess politically right
Mhm.
now. people are concerned because we don't know what the future holds. And my students and I today had a very long discussion about Project 2025 and ways that it could impact the United States, and sort of the how do you balance state laws and constitutions versus federal mandates, and how messy that can all get. And certainly one of the questions and concerns they have is, are we going to continue to have access to Plan B? Are we going to be able to continue to provide free condoms to students here on campus? Are we going to fall afoul of like the Construct Act if it starts to be enforced, even though it was written in the late 1800s and hasn't been enforced for a very long time? So any thoughts about, given the election, like what's next for ineedanA.com? And is there any way, like if the Comstock Act starts to be enforced, is there any way you could pivot to start adding access to like, the out in international waters, the Icelandic group is going to have their ship and you can go and, get your abortion there. Thoughts on the chaos?
Yes. There were a lot of questions in there.
Yeah.
But that's I'm just making notes. I'm like, make sure to say these things. So for I need an A, the truth of the matter is our 2025 roadmap looks the exact same as it would in a Harris presidency. We are always focused on iterating and giving the best information given what we know today. And so either way that it went, which maybe there's not comfort in that. There is comfort in that for me. But either way, we knew that we needed to expand our data on where you could get miscarriage management at local ERs. We knew we needed to expand our data on where you could get pre or post-abortion ultrasounds at places that are not crisis pregnancy centers. And so we knew that we needed to make it easier and more secure for people to access funding, logistical support, emotional support, legal advice. And so like all of these things where we're trying to make it faster and better and empower people to be more confident in accessing their abortions, none of that's really changed at all. And Dobbs didn't even like super dramatically change it, right? Like I think, the ethos that we take with design is design for the worst user experience that someone is experiencing. And we know that that is continuing to get worse, and it's been bad for a lot of people for a really long time. So when you focus on iteration, it makes seeing progress and the clarity of what's next, what do we think's after that easier and more calm. So not much has changed for us. We're focusing on building the best user experience possible with the most accurate data. If there was a confirmed and vetted provider providing care on a boat in the Gulf of Mexico, we'd have them listed tomorrow.
Okay.
And that's how we built our system to be really flexible in order to do that. I think, the thing that we see and we've seen post-Dobbs that worries me and as advice that I try to give everyone is it's really the thing with chaos is part of that's the point, to create confusion, to create chilling effects. And so there are two things that are really critical in moments like this. One is to make sure that you're sharing accurate and comprehensive information and not hot takes, right? Like we see so much confusion constantly when there are spikes in the news about abortion where people go, oh my God, I'm in California. I know abortion's banned. And it's like, no, sweetheart, it's not. You can go get a free one, walk in down the street. It'll be okay. So it's important to share comprehensive information that's accurate and not produce more fear. because people are very confused. And that's the last thing you want if you're experiencing an unintended pregnancy, is to make that confusion worse. The second thing is it's really important that we do not comply in advance. And I think that we've seen uh, a lot of people make decisions to stop providing care because a law was going to go in effect, it seems like, in a couple months. That's not something we want to encourage, right? We need to continue to provide care that is legal. We need to fight these chilling effects as long as possible. Um, and we need to share accurate information about doing that. So yeah, so that's I need Nate. What changes? Not a ton. We're gonna keep building awesome stuff. And even if there is a national ban, people are gonna keep needing and getting abortions. And
Hmm.
we're gonna keep building uh updated, user-friendly, and protected by our First Amendment right ways of helping them navigate that. Um, Looking ahead to new laws that may or may not come down the pike, don't comply in advance. That's the thing that we need to have a mantra. We need to be looking at our healthcare providers. We need to be looking at our politicians, looking at our law enforcement folks, and demanding that people in leadership not comply in advance. Um, because that's one of the things that we can control. And then when it comes to if and when things are, worst case scenario, we know that abortion is going to happen no matter what. Abortion pills are in our communities. Abortion's older than the church and the state and more popular than both, right? We will continue to get people care. It will look different. It will still be safe thanks to medical advancements like abortion pills.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things that, in particular, for people who are in uh, less restricted contexts and able to access services like just the pill in Minnesota, I'm recommending to all of my friends order pills in advance. It is legal to get advanced provision abortion pills for yourself, and we can have them in our medicine cabinets. And so, like, if and mifepristone has a shelf life of 2 years, misoprostol has a shelf life of 5 years. Guess what? If they enact Comstock, we can have this already on hand, and they can't stop that. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts on the chaos. Share accurate information, don't comply in advance, and order pills in advance to have on hand for yourself or
Yeah.
someone you love.
Absolutely. Thanks for the three-step plan. I love a clear three-step plan. It is great. I know we're getting to sort of, I want to be able to give people a chance to ask them questions if they have them. But I do want to sort of end with can you talk a little bit about like our students and how students can turn their STEM skills, and education towards making the world a better place? I know I had sent to you an email with the term STEMinist, and a lot of most of my students are in information science, computer science, and they consider themselves STEMinists and they want to make a difference in the world. So, like, what can they do? What advice do you have for them?
I mean, I think the best advice that I have is keep investing in yourself, even in these moments of darkness, even in these moments of chaos. You need to never stop learning. And, I mentioned earlier the arc of my career is like following the things that really intrigue me and doubling down in them. That process of following those sparks of inspiration and playing and creating is how I got to the place where I could build I Need an A. And it's how I got to the place where I could confidently leave my tech job to build I Need an A, right? And build these systems. So I think that trusting your intuition and trusting the things that bring you joy and happiness and doubling down in them, that's the number one piece of advice I have. Because when you do that, you'll find these moments where you look around and in the issue areas that you care about, it be it abortion, be it immigration, be it uh trans rights, be it gay marriage, right? You'll look around at these issues that you care about and you'll see people that are doing this incredible work, and you will see gaps in what they're able to do, right? you'll be able to go, oh my God, there's not a comprehensive database of abortion clinics because all the abortion clinics are too busy providing care, right? Like they don't have time to do the search engine optimization in a way that crisis pregnancy centers do because they're not helping anyone, right? Holy crap. Like I can do that. And you
Hmm.
can look around and go, why isn't anyone doing that? Well, it turns out that national organizations had their hands tied where they couldn't link comprehensively to every clinic. They could only link to the ones in their membership, right? There are these reasons why it didn't exist and reasons why someone else couldn't do it. And I had invested in the skills that enabled me to do it. And so I think that mindset of trusting your gut, doing the things that bring you joy, investing in yourself, and then looking around and finding the gaps and going, hey, I think I can do that. Be it database management, social media, any of these things. There are organizations that need that help. And you will be uh, depending on the time of day. Sometimes it's like, no, like give us a second because we're a little overwhelmed, which I think is the case for a lot of folks this week in particular. But a lot of the times if you go, hi, I'm here to help, I can do this, I know how to do this, and you don't have to manage me in doing it, people will be like, hell yes, like here it is, like come on in. And then you can be doing something that really brings you joy and is contributing back to a thing that you really care about, and is filling a gap for other folks. And I think that that for me is the sweet spot of where I like to operate. So I don't know.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, my heart. Your words are very inspiring, and I appreciate that so much. I am going to turn it open for questions. If people are comfortable, you can raise your hand and I can call on you and unmute you. Or if you'd like, you can go ahead and put a question into the Q&A, either anonymously or with your name. The choice is yours. But let's just give people a few minutes to prepare some questions. Or even feel free to make a comment, and it's we're all friends here, so. Well, I'm going to ask one last question just in case people are typing or that. And I, what gives you the courage to do this work? I mean, I know you've talked about sort of your passions and seeing the need, but is there anything else that sort of what makes you strong?
Um, I was trying to think about this before we started too. I think that, you know, the long history of, abortion, like I said, is older than the church and the state and more popular. As long as we've been giving birth, we've been having abortions. It's just this nature of who we are as humans. I think that that gives me a lot of confidence and clarity in my convictions. And then I think that there's this incredible long tradition of birth work, of midwifery care, I mean, in history, literal like witches, right? Were doing this work and or who were considered witches. And I think that ancestry of people taking care of people through these moments, these life-altering, life-changing moments of birth, of abortion, of death. And it I think that it's really holy work, for lack of a better term. And we are standing on just untold generations of power of doing this work. And it has always been people who have not had that power have always tried to stifle it, right?
Hmm.
They have always tried to shut it down. They have always tried to take it from us, and they have never succeeded, really. And they can slow down progress, but they can't actually stop it. And I think that that gives me uh, a lot of courage when I look at the history of birth work and abortion. Renee Bracey Sherman just released a book called Liberating Abortion that really dives in to a lot of history, in particular looking at the history of people of color in
Hmm.
this movement and their contributions. And I think that, I mean, that her and her co-author, um, uh, Regina Mahoney, interviewed folks that were they interviewed the people of color that were part of the Jane Collective in Chicago, right?
Mm.
They've done these historical analysis, and I think that that lineage um, of people who've done this before me and who have been through worse um, and have been resilient and have continued to help people get the care that they need because there's just no other option. We will continue helping people no matter what. That gives me a lot of, uh, and that's, I hesitate to say the word courage. It gives me a lot of clarity in my convictions. And maybe that's the same thing, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, well, thank you so much. We actually don't have any questions in the Q&A. If people have questions, feel free to send them to me at heather.brown@stcloudstate.edu. I'm very happy to pass them along because I know if any of you are like me, that this is a lot of good information. You might need some time to process it, and a question will pop up tomorrow. So I'm happy to facilitate that connection. And Becca, thank you so much for giving us your time tonight. I appreciate your passion and your insight and the work that you do to help other people. And again, thank you so much. And I look forward to having another conversation with you in the future.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for having me. And please, yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. I am chronically online and available via email. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to chat.
Wonderful. Thank you. Have a good night. And good night, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. And look forward to speaking with you all later as well. So, all right. Bye.
Bye.